When pictures of the past shimmer up from the waters of the river, as if by magic, figures come alive, whose artificiality here seems totally natural. The broad sweeping staircase where ladies with white powdered faces and their consorts would disembark from their gondolas became a stage on which courtly life unfolded like a perfect spectacle. In the erotic sign language of the day, every glance, every flutter of the eyelashes must surely have had a deeper, tempting meaning. But this delightfully dreamy moment is unceremoniously dispelled by the intrusion of the present, schoolchildren on an outing to Pillnitz Palace 3 centuries later. And yet here the past and the present seem to go hand in hand. Pillnitz plays a special role among the summer residences with which Augustus the Strong surrounded his royal capital. Extending out behind the Grand Neues Palais, the new palace, are huge grounds which Matthäus Pöppelmann designed for the Elector and monarch in 1720. Here, on the banks of the river Elbe, the celebrated Baroque architect realized the ideal building concept of his day. Embracing nature and architecture, he created a comprehensive work of art. An artistic delight in nature became an integral element of courtly living. Elector August, who loved to sponsor buildings, had the palace constructed and decorated in Far Eastern style. Chinese elements had become fashionable at his court with its craving for disguise. Suitors driven to distraction by fair ladies so near yet out of reach. Courtly society, for whom amusement was a religion, shows itself to be just as frolicsome on the steps of this water palace on the banks of the Elbe. Anyone today wishing to follow in the wake of that courtly society must take one of the traditional paddle wheel steamers belonging to the White Fleet. Ever since the mid-19th century, they have been sailing the river as it meanders through the widening valley. As the meadows lining the Elbe slip past, the traveller may well have feelings similar to those of Heinrich von Kleist 2 centuries ago. It seemed to me like a landscape woven on a carpet, green fields and villages with a broad river that turns quickly in order to kiss Dresden. But before that kiss could take place, the steamer had sailed past 3 palaces which Kleist could not have seen atop the slopes along the Elbe. Majestic in themselves, these 19th century edifices offer a wonderful view of the river. Behind Eckberg Palace, today a top-class hotel, we see Lingner Palace, and in the distance a building designed in 1850 for Prince Albrecht of Prussia. The seemingly natural park landscape is also an artificial creation. Thousands of trees were planted on the slopes of a former vineyard. A part of Prussia, it seems, has been transplanted here in the Saxon landscape along the Elbe. Designed in monumental style by a pupil of Carl Friedrich Schinkel and towering up above the classicist-covered walk, on the uppermost terrace is Albrechtsberg Palace. As if the view of the Elbe were not enough, Prince Albrecht had the walls of the garden room adorned with his favorite landscapes. The brother of the King of Prussia, Albrecht, lived here not so much because of the beauty of the Elbe Valley, but because he had been forced to leave Berlin after marrying beneath his station. The cool classicism of his apartment stood out from the elaborate Saxon method of construction. Hohenzollern emblems. The Prussian eagle spreads its golden wings on Saxon territory. Via the marble spiral staircase, arched over by a dome from which the Prussian dynasty gazes down on visitors, a manservant would conduct the prince's guests to the bel étage. In 1952, the palace was sequestered by the Soviet Ministry of Foreign Trade. Prince Albrecht would doubtless be astonished to see his crown room used today for staging events organized by the Concert and Congress Company. And his manservant would most certainly rush to close the doors. Before the estate served the prince as a home in exile, there was a cafe on the terrace. On fine days, it attracted local citizens and prominent artists who would enjoy the view of the Elbe over a glass of wine or a cup of coffee. The neighboring small palace, long since left to go to rack and ruin, presents an almost surreal picture. But in the early 20th century, a successful prominent figure, an industrious manufacturer called Ernst August Lingner, held court here and staged lavish parties in rooms which back then were luxuriously decorated. Dresden, the former Saxon royal capital, often celebrated as Florence on the Elbe, seems to have retained its familiar silhouette, or at least to have regained it. The Augustus Bridge is surrounded by buildings whose names have gone down in architectural history. The Brühl Terrace, the domed church of Our Lady, and the Catholic court church. Nearly everything that was destroyed in one night during a horrific bombing raid in the Second World War has been faithfully rebuilt, like the jewel of the Rococo period, the Zwinger, and the Semper Opera House. And yet, even after more than half a century, some wounds have still not healed, and there are even older scars. Over the last 3 centuries, storm clouds have gathered time and again over Saxony's magnificent capital. Disaster has struck the Florence on the Elbe many times. It suffered appalling devastation during the 7 Years' War. And in 1813, during the Napoleonic Wars, when the 50,000 inhabitants of Dresden saw 7 million soldiers pass through their town. Silent witnesses to dramatic events, and not only during wartime. In 1868, the world's most beautiful court theatre, the Semper Opera House, caught fire and burnt to the ground. But not only the court, the entire citizenry of Dresden demanded that it be rebuilt by the original architect. 12 years passed before Carl Maria von Weber's Jubilation Overture rang out at the inauguration of the monumental second Semper Opera House. The royal capital on the Elbe preserved its reputation as a cultural stronghold. But the Kingdom of Saxony lost its political power. The Muses have remained at home in Dresden, and they cannot be made responsible for some forms of cultural progress. As a cultural landscape that has continued to develop, UNESCO has declared the Elbe Valley part of the world's cultural heritage. On the western periphery of the city, almost hidden in the maze of industrial buildings, its disrepair mercifully hidden from view by trees, stands Übigau Palace. It's far removed from the splendid plans which Augustus the Strong had in mind for the banks of Dresden's Canale Grande. The Blue Wonder, a sign of progress and a bone of contention because it's made of steel. The ships of the White Fleet pass under the bridge on their way to and from Pillnitz. It comes as no surprise to learn that most locals who liked to equate architecture with the Baroque regarded the steel lattice bridge as an eyesore, even though it meant they no longer had to cross the river by skiff. This self-supporting structure, which has no central pillars, has spanned the Elbe between the villages of Blasewitz and Loschwitz ever since 1898. Once regarded as scandalous, it has since become a popular attraction. Although it is more grey in colour, the Blue Wonder is cultivated and praised as a monument to industrial culture. Even though it cannot compete with a summer residence like nearby Pillnitz, the Elbe Valley would be unthinkable without it. And when, having returned to our starting point, we see courtly society strolling along the old paths, the haughtiness we ascribe to their expressions cannot hide our sadness at the evanescence of those days. And when we, together with them, ignore the incursions of the present to prevent the place from losing some of its magic, our imagination allows them to tread the steps anew. And all the while, the river flows inexorably through the wide valley, past 20 kilometers of the world's cultural heritage, on its way to the sea. The Elbe, flowing from one broad realm into another. Wherever one looks, one becomes inebriated with beauty. Such fulsome praise came not from a poet, but from Frederick William II, King of Prussia.